Nothing personal, Jake. The board thinks you've lost your edge. My name is Jake Landry. I'm 49 years old and I built Summit Edge Consulting from nothing. Derek Vaughn sat across from me in our Portland conference room with 2 board members flanking him like bodyguards. The papers were already drawn up. Legal, clean, ruthless. I didn't argue. I shook his hand and said, "Good luck, brother." 17 years. That's how long Derek and I had been partners. Started this consulting firm in a cramped office above a coffee shop on Northwest 23rd Street. I handled the clients, he handled the presentations. I built the relationships, he built the reputation. Or so I thought. The thing about Derek was he always needed to be the smartest guy in the room. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suits. The kind of man who could sell ice to an Eskimo and make them thank him for it. Me? I wore khakis and button-downs. Drove a 10-year-old Ford pickup. Clients liked that I didn't look like I was trying to impress them. But something had shifted in the past year. Derek started talking about modernizing our approach and leveraging new market dynamics. Board meetings became more frequent. Conversations I wasn't invited to started happening behind closed doors. When I asked about it, Derek would just smile and say, "Trust the process, Jake." The warning signs were there. Derek started taking credit for client wins I had orchestrated. He began scheduling one-on-one meetings with our biggest accounts without including me. When I brought up concerns about our profit margins, he dismissed them as operational minutia. Last month, I walked past the conference room and heard my name through the glass. Derek was speaking to someone on speakerphone saying, "Jake's getting too comfortable. We need fresh blood to take this company to the next level." I should have confronted him then. Instead, I went back to my office and kept working. Kept believing that loyalty meant something. Kept thinking that the man I had trusted with everything wouldn't stab me in the back. But Derek had been planning this for months. The board members sitting beside him weren't just advisors anymore. They were his allies. The paperwork in front of me wasn't a discussion. It was an execution. "The company needs new leadership," one of the board members said. "This is what's best for everyone." I signed the papers, took my personal items from my office, walked out to the parking garage and sat in my truck for 20 minutes. Engine off, just thinking. That's when I realized something Derek didn't know. Something he had forgotten in all his scheming and politicking. The clients weren't loyal to Summit Edge Consulting. They were loyal to me. Derek and I met at a networking event in downtown Portland back in 2008. He was working for a big firm, making good money but hating every minute of it. I was freelancing, barely scraping by but loving the work. We talked for 3 hours that night about building something different. Something that actually helped businesses instead of just billing them to death. We pooled our savings and opened Summit Edge 6 months later. Derek brought the business development skills and corporate connections. I brought the technical expertise and work ethic. For the first few years, we were equals, partners in every sense of the word. Derek married Vanessa 2 years after we started the company. Big wedding, expensive honeymoon. I was his best man. When my dad died of cancer 3 years later, Derek flew back from a vacation in Europe to be at the funeral. We were brothers, not just business partners. But success changed things. As our client list grew and revenue increased, Derek started focusing more on image and less on substance. He hired expensive consultants to redesign our logo, moved us into a flashy downtown office with views of the river, started talking about scaling our brand. I preferred the old way, direct relationships with clients, honest conversations about their problems, solutions that actually worked instead of buzzword-heavy presentations that sounded impressive but delivered nothing. The first real crack appeared 2 years ago when we landed Meridian Industries as a client. I had spent months building a relationship with their operations director, understanding their supply chain issues, developing a comprehensive strategy to streamline their processes. Derek swooped in for the final presentation and took all the credit when they signed the contract. "You do great work, Jake," he told me afterward. "But you need to let me handle the client-facing stuff. That's where I add value." More warning signs followed. Derek started scheduling client dinners without me. He hired a marketing firm to enhance our thought leadership presence, which meant ghost-written articles under his byline in industry publications. He joined the board of directors for the Portland Business Alliance and began speaking at conferences. Meanwhile, I kept doing what I had always done: solving problems, building relationships, making sure our clients got results. But Derek was building something else, a network of influence that didn't include me. Board members who saw him as the visionary and me as the worker bee. A narrative where he was the leader and I was just along for the ride. 6 months ago, Derek hired a chief operating officer without consulting me. A month later, he restructured our profit-sharing agreement, reducing my stake in future growth. Each change came with reasonable explanations and legal documentation. I should have seen it coming. The man I trusted was systematically removing me from my own company. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. Derek had rehearsed his talking points. The board members nodded at appropriate intervals. The paperwork was professionally printed and organized in a leather portfolio. "This transition will be seamless," Derek explained. "Your clients will be reassigned to appropriate account managers. Your equity stake will be bought out at fair market value over 18 months. Fair market value. As if 17 years of my life could be reduced to a spreadsheet calculation. I looked around the conference room where we had celebrated so many victories together. The framed photo of our first office still hung on the wall. Derek shaking hands with our first major client. Me in the background holding a folder full of the actual work that made the deal possible. "Any questions, Jake?" Derek asked. "Just one. When did you decide to do this?" Derek's smile faltered for half a second. "It's been an ongoing discussion. The board feels it's time for fresh leadership." The board. 3 people Derek had recruited over the past year. People who knew his version of our company's history, but had never worked alongside me during the lean years when we were building something from nothing. I signed the papers without reading them, shook hands with everyone in the room, walked back to my office and packed my personal items into a cardboard box. A few books, a coffee mug my daughter had made in art class, the business card from our first client, now yellowed with age. My assistant Jennifer looked confused as I carried the box past her desk. "Taking some work home?" she asked. "Something like that," I said. I drove home to my house in the hills above Portland and sat on my back deck looking out over the city. Called my daughter at college and told her I was taking some time off. Called my ex-wife and asked her to handle the mortgage payment next month while I figured things out. Then I called my lawyer. "Jake," Tom Harrison said when I reached him. "Been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need you to review my original partnership agreement with Derek, specifically the client relationship clauses. Planning something interesting? Maybe. Can you meet me tomorrow morning?" "Of course. Bring coffee." That evening I opened my laptop and started making a list. Every major client relationship I had built over the past 17 years. Every personal connection. Every handshake agreement and gentleman's understanding that had nothing to do with Summit Edge Consulting and everything to do with trust. Derek thought he had outmaneuvered me. But he had made one critical mistake. He assumed the clients belonged to the company. They didn't. They belonged to the person who had earned their trust, solved their problems, and delivered results year after year. That person wasn't Summit Edge Consulting. It was me. Tom Harrison spread the partnership agreement across his conference table like a surgeon preparing for an operation. 23 pages of legal language that Derek and I had signed 17 years ago when we were young and optimistic and believed handshake deals were enough. "Interesting reading," Tom said, adjusting his glasses. "Your original contract has some unusual provisions." I sipped my coffee and waited for him to explain. "Standard partnership agreements usually assign all client relationships to the company. Yours doesn't. Look at Section 12. I read the highlighted paragraph twice before understanding its significance. We had negotiated personal service agreements with individual clients separate from the corporate contract structure. At the time, it seemed like a technicality designed to protect us if the company failed. Now, it looked like a lifeline. "What does this mean practically?" I asked. "It means your major clients have contractual relationships with you personally, not just with Summit Edge. If you choose to leave and start your own firm, they have the legal right to follow you." Derek had forgotten about Section 12, or maybe he had never understood it in the first place. He was so focused on removing me from the board and buying out my equity that he missed the most important detail. I owned the relationships. Tom leaned back in his chair. "How many clients fall under these personal service provisions?" I had spent the previous evening making that exact calculation. 26 major accounts, roughly 70% of our total revenue. That's substantial leverage. Derek doesn't know yet. The forced buyout doesn't take effect for 30 days. That gives me a month to make some phone calls. But I had to be careful. Non-compete clauses still applied. I couldn't actively solicit Summit Edge clients while I was technically still an employee. However, I could have informal conversations about future business relationships. I could discuss hypothetical scenarios. I could plant seeds. My first call was to Patricia Williams, Operations Director at Clearwater Manufacturing. We had worked together for 8 years, transforming their production efficiency from worst in class to industry leader. "Jake," she said when she answered, "I heard rumors about changes at Summit Edge. Everything okay?" "Transition's happening, Patricia. I wanted to let you know personally that I'll be stepping away from the company soon." Silence on the other end. Then, "What does that mean for our project timeline?" "That depends. Our personal service agreement gives you some flexibility in choosing your consulting provider. If you're interested in continuing our work relationship, I'm exploring options." "I see. When will you know more?" "Within the month. I'll keep you informed." Similar conversations followed with other key clients. Nothing explicit. Nothing that violated my non-compete agreement. Just honest discussions about future possibilities. Derek called me 3 days later. "Jake, I'm hearing strange things from some of our clients. Questions about account transitions. What's going on?" "People are concerned about changes," I said. "I'm reassuring them that Summit Edge will take good care of them." "That's not what I'm hearing. Patricia Williams specifically asked about working with you directly after your departure." "Did she? That's interesting." Derek's voice sharpened. "You're not allowed to solicit our clients, Jake. The non-compete is very clear. I'm not soliciting anyone. I'm having conversations about business relationships that predate our partnership agreement. Check Section 12 if you have questions." The line went quiet. Derek was probably scrambling to find his copy of our original contract, trying to remember details he had ignored for 17 years. "We need to meet," he said finally. "Your office or mine?" "This isn't a joke, Jake. You're playing with fire." "No, Derek. I'm playing by the rules we established when we started this company, the rules you forgot about when you decided to push me out." But Derek wasn't finished. Within a week, he had hired employment lawyers and filed injunctions trying to prevent me from communicating with any Summit Edge clients. He leaked stories to industry publications about my unprofessional conduct and attempts to damage the company. He scheduled emergency meetings with our biggest accounts, trying to lock them into long-term contracts that would survive my departure. The war had begun, and Derek was fighting it with lawyers and public relations campaigns. I was fighting it with relationships and trust. Derek's legal strategy backfired spectacularly. The injunction hearing lasted 2 hours. His lawyers argued that I was attempting to steal proprietary client relationships. My lawyers simply read Section 12 of our partnership agreement aloud. The judge dismissed the injunction and awarded me legal fees. "Mr. Vaughn," the judge said, "perhaps you should have read your own contract more carefully before filing frivolous motions." But the real revelation came 3 days later when Jennifer, my former assistant, called me at home. "Jake, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "Derek asked me to go through your client files and remove any personal contact information, phone numbers, email addresses, meeting notes, anything that might help you reach them directly." "Did you do it?" "Some of it." but I made copies first. Derek doesn't know. Jennifer had been with Summit Edge for 6 years. She had watched Derek's transformation from partner to predator. She had seen him take credit for my work, marginalize my contributions, and systematically plan my removal. There's more, she continued. Derek's been meeting with a consulting firm called Brennan Associates. They specialize in hostile takeovers of small professional services companies. He's been planning this for over a year. The pieces fell into place. Derek hadn't suddenly decided I was losing my edge. He had been systematically positioning himself to force me out and steal the company we had built together. The board members weren't independent advisors. They were his hand-picked allies. The restructured profit-sharing agreement wasn't about company growth. It was about reducing my leverage. Even worse, Derek had been negotiating to sell Summit Edge to a larger consulting firm. A deal that would make him wealthy beyond anything we had ever imagined. A deal that required removing me as an obstacle to streamlined operations. Jennifer, I need those files. Already copied everything to a secure drive. Derek fired me this morning for asking too many questions about the client transition process. Derek had made another critical mistake. Jennifer knew where all the bodies were buried. She had organized every client file, scheduled every meeting, and processed every invoice for the past 6 years. She understood our business operations better than anyone except me. I'm starting a new firm, I told her. Interested in a job? When do we start? That evening, I called Tom Harrison with an update. Derek's been planning this takeover for over a year. He's working with acquisition specialists and preparing to sell the company. That changes things, Tom said. If he's been actively planning to remove you while negotiating a sale, that might constitute fraud. What are my options? Several. We could file a lawsuit alleging breach of fiduciary duty. We could seek an injunction preventing the sale until your claims are resolved. Or we could let him proceed and destroy his own company through client defections. I thought about the 3 options. A lawsuit would take years and cost a fortune. An injunction would tie everything up in court indefinitely. But the third option was elegant in its simplicity. Let him hang himself, I said. You're sure? Once those clients leave, there's no going back for Summit Edge. Derek made his choice when he decided to betray me. Now he gets to live with the consequences. The next morning, I incorporated Landry Strategic Group and opened a business bank account. Jennifer designed a simple website and ordered business cards. We rented a small office space in Northwest Portland, 3 blocks from where Derek and I had started Summit Edge 17 years earlier. Everything was ready. Derek just didn't know it yet. The official launch of Landry Strategic Group happened on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Jennifer and I had spent the previous weekend setting up our new office. 2 desks, a conference table, a coffee machine, and a whiteboard with the names of 26 client contacts. My first official call was to Patricia Williams at Clearwater Manufacturing. Patricia, this is Jake Landry. I wanted to let you know that I've established an independent consulting practice. If you're interested in continuing our work relationship, Landry Strategic Group is ready to serve you. Jake, thank God. We've been dreading the transition to Derek's people. They don't understand our operations like you do. When can we start? How about today? By noon, I had signed contracts with 12 major clients. By end of week, 18. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Relief that they could continue working with me directly. Concern about Summit Edge's ability to deliver results without my involvement. Eagerness to formalize new consulting agreements. Derek called me Friday afternoon, his voice tight with controlled rage. You've stolen half our client base. I haven't stolen anything. I've honored existing contractual relationships that you chose to ignore. This is corporate sabotage, Jake. I'm filing criminal charges. Good luck with that. Everything I've done is perfectly legal and clearly outlined in our original partnership agreement. The agreement you signed. The agreement you forgot about. Those clients belong to Summit Edge. No, Derek. Those clients belong to the person who earned their trust and delivered results. That person happens to be me. But Derek wasn't giving up. He hired a crisis management firm to control the narrative. Industry publications received carefully crafted stories about Summit Edge's strategic restructuring and exciting new leadership direction. Derek scheduled meetings with remaining clients, offering discounted rates and extended contracts to prevent further defections. He also filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau and professional licensing boards, alleging that I had violated ethical standards by soliciting former clients. Each complaint was dismissed after review of our partnership agreement and client contracts. The real blow came when Patricia Williams called Derek directly to cancel Clearwater Manufacturing's remaining contracts with Summit Edge. "Mr. Vaughn," she told him, "we appreciate your past service, but our relationship was always with Jake personally. We're following our consultant, not your company." Derek tried one final desperate move. He offered to match my fees and assign his best remaining consultants to handle the departing accounts. He promised executive-level attention and resources that a small independent firm couldn't provide. But he was missing the fundamental point. The clients weren't leaving Summit Edge because of price or resources. They were leaving because they trusted me and didn't trust him. By the end of my first month in business, Landry Strategic Group had 24 active clients and projected annual revenue of $3.2 million. Summit Edge had lost over 60% of its billing capacity and was hemorrhaging money on fixed overhead costs. Derek's dream of selling the company evaporated. No acquisition firm wanted a consulting business that had just lost most of its clients and all of its institutional knowledge. The board members he had recruited started asking uncomfortable questions about the company's financial projections and future viability. 3 months later, Jennifer forwarded me a news article from the Portland Business Journal. Summit Edge Consulting was filing for bankruptcy protection. Derek Vaughn was stepping down as chief executive officer and pursuing other opportunities. I felt no satisfaction reading the news. Derek had brought this destruction on himself through arrogance and betrayal. But we had built something good together once upon a time. Watching it die felt like losing a part of my own history. Still, some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Derek had made his choice. Now he was living with the consequences. The bankruptcy filing made front page of the Portland Business Journal's Monday edition. Local consulting firm collapses after partner exodus. Ran above a photo of the Summit Edge office building with a "For Lease" sign visible in the lobby. I read the article over coffee in my new office. Derek was quoted extensively, blaming market conditions and unforeseen competitive pressures for the company's failure. No mention of his systematic betrayal or attempted corporate theft. No acknowledgement of his role in destroying what we had built together. The article included financial details that made the scope of Summit Edge's collapse clear. Assets of $200,000, liabilities of $1.8 million, 17 employees laid off, office lease terminated, equipment sold to pay creditors. Derek had gambled everything on his ability to remove me and retain our clients. He lost. My phone rang while I was reading. Tom Harrison calling with an update. "Jake, I just heard from Derek's bankruptcy attorney. He wants to meet." "About what?" "Settlement discussions. Derek's claiming you violated your non-compete agreement and owes Summit Edge damages for client theft." I laughed. "He's bankrupt and he wants me to pay him money?" "Apparently so. His lawyer thinks they can argue that your actions caused the company's failure." "When's the meeting?" "Thursday afternoon if you're interested." I thought about it for 30 seconds. Set it up. Thursday's meeting lasted exactly 12 minutes. Derek sat across from me in his lawyer's conference room, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. His silver hair needed cutting. "Jake," his lawyer began, "we believe your departure and subsequent actions directly caused Summit Edge's financial collapse. We're prepared to seek damages of—" "Stop," I said, opening my briefcase. "Before you embarrass yourself further, read this." I handed him a copy of our original partnership agreement with Section 12 highlighted in yellow. "Your client breached his fiduciary duty by attempting to force out his partner while secretly negotiating to sell the company. My client exercised his legal rights under existing contracts. Any questions?" Derek's lawyer skimmed the document and his face went pale. "We'll need time to review this." "No, you won't," I said, standing up. "This meeting is over." Derek finally spoke as I reached the door. "Jake, wait." I turned around. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I made mistakes." For a moment he looked like the man I had trusted for 17 years. The partner who had stood beside me at my father's funeral. The friend who had believed we could build something lasting together. "Yes," I said. "You did." 6 months later, Landry Strategic Group employed 8 consultants and occupied a full floor in a downtown Portland office building. We had grown beyond my original client base, winning new accounts through referrals and reputation. Jennifer had been promoted to operations manager. Our revenue projections showed sustained growth for the next 3 years. I kept the framed photo from our first Summit Edge office on my desk. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder of what partnership should look like. A reminder of what happens when trust gets broken. A reminder of why loyalty matters more than profit. Derek had disappeared from Portland's business community. Some people said he moved to Seattle. Others heard he was working for a large consulting firm in California, back to being an employee instead of an owner. I never tried to find out the truth. The clients who had followed me to Landry Strategic Group were thriving. Clearwater Manufacturing had expanded into 2 new markets using strategies we developed together. North Peak Engineering had doubled their operational efficiency. Ravenspark Ventures had completed their most successful acquisition in company history. These were the relationships Derek had tried to steal. These were the partnerships he had dismissed as operational minutia. These were the people who had trusted me with their businesses and their futures. My daughter visited the office last month during her spring break from college. She walked around the space, meeting my team, watching how we worked together. "Dad," she said afterward, "this feels different from your old office." "How so?" "More honest, I guess. Like everyone actually likes being here." That evening, I drove up to my house in the hills and sat on the back deck, looking out over the city lights. 17 years of partnership. 1 year of betrayal. 6 months of rebuilding. Some losses teach you what really matters.